You know the moment. You're sitting at a desk, standing in a crowded room, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, and it hits you. Not with drama, no music swells, just a quiet, sinking question. Why does none of this feel like it matters? You checked your phone, you sent the email, you laughed at the joke, you did everything right, and still, nothing. This isn't sadness, it's not burnout exactly, it's something flatter, emptier. Like the color has been drained out of ordinary life and you're the only one who noticed. You are not broken, you are not alone, and this feeling is not a mystery. It has a name, a structure, and a cause. Psychology has been tracking it for decades. The problem is, we keep treating it like a personal failure instead of what it really is, a predictable response to a world that has systematically dismantled every source of meaning we once relied on. Welcome to Better You Daily. Where in the world are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in. Let's start with what meaning actually is. Psychologists break it into three parts: coherence, the sense that your life makes sense, that events connect in some understandable way; purpose, a direction, something you're moving toward; significance, the belief that your existence matters beyond yourself. Most people who say nothing feels meaningful are missing at least one of these, often all three. Coherence is shot because your days are a fragmented blur of apps, tasks, and notifications that don't relate to each other. Purpose is fuzzy because you're not sure where you're headed or if you even chose the direction you're in. Significance is the hardest. In a world of 8 billion people, infinite content, and global crises you can't personally fix, the idea that you matter feels almost arrogant. But it wasn't always like this. For most of human history, meaning came pre-assembled. Religion told you why you were here and what came after. Your village gave you a role and people who depended on you. Your work was physical, visible, and tied directly to survival. You built the shelter, you didn't freeze. You grew the food, you didn't starve. Cause and effect were immediate. Effort had a face. Then everything shifted. Industrialization, secularization, digital saturation. One by one, the scaffolding was removed. Religion receded, communities fractured. Work became abstract. You now spend 8 hours moving numbers so a corporation you don't believe in can sell a product you don't use to strangers you'll never meet. The feedback loop is broken. You work, but nothing changes in your hands. You earn, but the money evaporates into rent and subscriptions. You connect with hundreds of people online, but no one knows when you're hurting. This is the meaning crisis. Not that life is inherently meaningless, it's that the traditional sources have collapsed and we haven't built anything sturdy enough to replace them. Your brain never evolved for this. Dopamine evolved to reward effort that kept you alive. You spotted a berry bush, you picked the berries, you felt good. You tracked and killed an animal, you felt good. The reward came after sustained effort, and it reinforced behaviors with real survival value. Today, that system is hijacked. Every swipe, every notification, every infinite scroll delivers a microdose of dopamine. Your brain thinks it's finding berries, but they're not real. They're synthetic rewards divorced from effort or consequence. And here's the trap. After constant low-effort stimulation, your dopamine baseline drops. Ordinary activities, reading, conversation, a walk, no longer register as rewarding. They feel dull, boring, pointless. So you scroll faster, buy more, chase harder. Each hit is shorter than the last. The emptiness grows. But dopamine is only the hardware. The software is the stories we tell ourselves. Humans are narrative creatures. We don't just experience events, we weave them into stories about who we are and why we're here. When the story breaks, meaning collapses with it. Previous generations had clear scripts. In the 50s, it was work, marry, house, kids, retire. Linear, narrow, oppressive in many ways. We rightly rejected large parts of it. But we never agreed on a new script. Now you have infinite choice. You can be anything, believe anything, go anywhere. And choice, when it's truly unlimited, becomes paralyzing. The philosopher Kierkegaard called it dizziness of freedom. When every path is possible, no path feels necessary. You're free to construct your own meaning, but no one gave you the tools. So you drift. Social media makes it worse. You're not just drifting, you're watching everyone else's highlight reel while you're stuck in your behind the scenes. Their engagements, promotions, sunlit mornings. You compare your ordinary Tuesday with their curated Sunday, and you come up short, not just in achievement, in existential worth. If everyone else is living their best life and you're just living, what's wrong with you? Nothing. But the feeling doesn't care about logic. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust and spent his career studying meaning. He found that even in camps, those who could find meaning, any meaning, survived longer than those who lost hope. His crucial insight? Meaning is not discovered, it is created. And it does not require happiness. Suffering can be meaningful if it serves a purpose you believe in. Frankl identified 3 sources of meaning: work that matters to you, love that connects you, and courage in the face of unavoidable difficulty. These 3 pillars haven't changed, but modern life has distorted each one. Work has become abstract. You don't build a cabinet, you attend meetings about cabinets. You don't see a finished product, you see an endless task list. Love has been flattened into digital gestures. You like, comment, swipe. But you don't sit in silence with someone and feel their presence. And courage? We've been taught that difficulty is a design flaw. We avoid it, numb it, outsource it. But difficulty is where meaning often grows. Avoid it entirely, and you avoid the soil it needs. So how do you rebuild? Not with a 5-step plan promising instant transformation. Those are snake oil. But with a shift in orientation. First, understand that meaning is not a feeling, it's a verdict. You don't wake up flooded with existential bliss. You decide through action that something matters. Then you act accordingly, regardless of how you feel. We think we need motivation to act. Often, action precedes motivation. You don't wait until you feel like exercising. You exercise, and then you become someone who exercises. Meaning works the same way. You don't wait for purpose. You commit, and purpose follows. Second, starve the noise. Not as a minimalist aesthetic, as a neurological hygiene. Your brain cannot discern meaning when it's constantly bombarded. You need unfilled time, silence, boredom. Not to fill with podcasts or background TV, but to sit with yourself. This is where coherence emerges, where you connect yesterday to today. Without this space, your life remains disconnected episodes, and disconnected episodes cannot feel meaningful. Third, do things that cost you. Psychologists distinguish hedonic pleasure, comfort, ease, instant gratification, from eudaimonic well-being, which comes from living in alignment with your values, even when it's hard. Video games are hedonic. Learning an instrument is eudaimonic. Scrolling is hedonic. Writing a thoughtful letter is eudaimonic. Both have their place. But if your life is hedonic all the way down, your eudaimonic muscle atrophies. You lose the capacity for sustained effort. And without sustained effort, sustained meaning is impossible. Fourth, contribute. This is the most robust finding in meaning research. People who volunteer, mentor, care for others, or engage in civic life report higher significance. Not because they're morally superior, because they've escaped the prison of the self. When your only concern is your own happiness, your own success, your own reflection, you're trapped in a loop of never enough. When you shift focus to someone else's well-being, the loop breaks. You matter because you have mattered to someone. Fifth, stop running from negative emotions. We've been sold the idea that sadness, anxiety, and frustration are bugs to be patched. They're not. They're signals. They tell you when something is wrong, when a value is threatened, when change is needed. Suppress them and you lose that information. You also lose the texture of a full life. Meaning is not the absence of pain. It is the integration of pain into a larger story. The most meaningful moments, Birth, sacrifice, farewell are rarely pure happiness. They are rich, complex, and often sorrowful. That complexity is the point. Now, let's be honest about community. For most of history, meaning wasn't an individual project. It was inherited. You didn't invent your purpose, you absorbed it from your family, your village, your faith. Today, we treat meaning as a solo quest, something you discover alone on a mountaintop or through a journaling prompt. This is a myth. Meaning is sustained in relationship. It is reinforced when you see others who share your values, when you participate in rituals, when people expect something from you and you show up. The unencumbered self, free from all obligation, is not liberated. It is lost. Practically, this means you may need to join something. A religious community, if that fits, a volunteer organization, a local sports team, a book club. Anything that requires you to appear, in person, regularly, and be seen. It will feel awkward. We've lost the muscle. Awkward is not failure. Awkward is the first repetition of a new exercise. You also need a temporal perspective. Meaning requires continuity. If you live only in the present, reacting to whatever slides across your screen, you lose the narrative arc of your life. You need a story that connects who you were to who you're becoming. Not a rigid 5-year plan, but a trajectory, a direction. Goals matter not primarily for the achievement, but for the orientation. They give daily actions a vector. Without one, you're just responding to stimuli. With one, you're building. But be careful. Self-help has turned goal setting into a performance. Dream big, visualize success, manifest abundance. This often backfires. When you tie meaning to massive, distant outcomes, you spend most of your time in a state of lack. You haven't arrived yet, so you're not enough yet. Instead, aim for what psychologists call self-concordant goals. Aims aligned with your values, not imposed by external expectation. Then, focus on the process, not the outcome. The meaning lives in the doing, not the having. A necessary distinction. Some of you are not experiencing existential emptiness. You are clinically depressed. There is a difference between confusion about meaning and a neurochemical condition that flattens all affect. If you cannot feel pleasure at all, if you cannot get out of bed, if you have thoughts of ending your life, this script is not medicine. Please seek professional help. Therapy and medication exist for a reason. Use them. But for those of you who are functional, even successful, and still hollow, you are not failing. You are responding rationally to an irrational environment. You have been fed a diet of endless stimulation, endless comparison, and endless consumption, and told this is freedom. It is not freedom. It is a cage with invisible bars. The way out is not backward. We cannot resurrect the 1950s or return to a pre-industrial village, but we can reclaim the mechanisms of meaning that are not era-dependent. Effort, connection, contribution, coherence, courage. These are not new. They are ancient. They have been buried under noise, but they are still accessible. You start small. Put your phone in another room and read a physical book for an hour. Call a friend instead of texting. Commit to a project that might fail. Show up for someone without keeping score. Allow yourself to be bored, frustrated, sad without reaching for a pacifier. These are not grand gestures. They are micro decisions. Each one is a vote for a different kind of life. Over time, something shifts. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually the flatness recedes. You notice moments of genuine absorption, a conversation that leaves you energized, a task that makes you forget to check the time, a memory that brings not just nostalgia, but a sense that your past was real, that it led somewhere. These moments are not constant. They are not supposed to be. Meaning is not a permanent state of bliss. It is the intermittent reinforcement of a life lived with intention. The question, why nothing feels meaningful anymore, is not rhetorical. It has answers. They are uncomfortable. They require changing behaviors, not just beliefs. They require admitting that convenience is not the same as fulfillment, and distraction is not the same as rest. But they also offer hope. If meaninglessness was learned, it can be unlearned. If your brain was trained towards emptiness, it can be retrained towards depth.
You are not trapped. You've been living in a system that profits from your disorientation. The first step is seeing it clearly. The second step is choosing something else. Not once, not perfectly, but repeatedly over the course of a life. And that choice, in itself, is meaningful. If this video resonated, if it made you feel even slightly less alone in the emptiness, take a second to like it. Not for the algorithm, for yourself. A small signal that this conversation matters. And if you want more of it, subscribe. It's a tiny act of intention. And intention, as you now know, is where meaning begins.